Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Core Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about the new Quantum Leap Revival, Season 2, Episode 11, titled The Outsider. The episode's description reads as follows. An anonymous source sends Ben and an experienced local Denver TV journalist on the trail of a dangerous conspiracy as they pursue the scoop of a lifetime in the early 1980s. There's trouble at HQ when Ian's past decisions come back to haunt the team, and the episode was that's it. The story was by Rami Park and teleplay by Rami Park and Margarita Matthews. Curiously, no writing credit for this episode other than that. And of course, the episode was directed by the Deborah Pratt, who we've spoken about many times before. She wrote a few episodes of the original series, was a major force behind the original Quantum Leap. But her most important credit was, of course, appearing on the Corn Productions podcast. That's actually now officially on the Internet Movie Database page.
Yeah.
Before before going
Margarita Matthews is credited with writing this
is
episode.
she?
Yeah.
Okay, because all I saw was a teleplay and a story credit.
On IMDb or in the
No, I
episode?
just saw that when I was looking through the credits on the actual episode, the screener. But
Oh.
maybe I just missed it.
Because
All right.
I've seen that it's credited to her for a couple weeks now. People have been saying that, so
Okay.
it's got to
Yeah,
be in there somewhere.
probably.
Maybe it wasn't the full credits yet on
Maybe.
the screener. I know this week's screener had a lot of audio issues, and it definitely wasn't air ready yet.
Right.
Speaking of
All right.
audio issues, just to let everybody know,
Oh,
we are
yes.
recording remotely today because we're both having a lot of weather stuff.
Yep. We're getting buried under some snow. Hopefully, it's
Yeah.
not the 12 feet of snow that your husband predicted the other day.
Well, it's definitely over 12 inches here now because when I took the dog out just a few minutes ago, it was went over my boot. So it's over 12 inches now, and it's still coming down really hard. So hopefully this is recording smoothly, but if we have any weird like audio gaps or echoing, that's why, because we're experiencing some
Yes.
really
Yeah, we will
really
definitely
bad
sound
weather
a little bit.
today.
Yep. All right. So before going further, we'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is an Ask for a Free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discoverable, quantum leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment as well as subscribing to our channel. All right. Shout outs this week. Ashley Wright commented that we had another great episode. Thank you for that. Ice Cube's brother is not actually related to Ice Cube. He
Big
clarified that
surprise.
for me. But apparently people do say that he looks like he could be his brother. So there's
Okay.
that. He also thanked us for reading our comment, or his comment rather. And like we're a small channel. We don't get the thousands of comments that the other channels perhaps do. So we do in fact read every single comment.
Well, not
Kelly M.
not technically every single. If you say something rude, we're not going to repeat it.
Well, we don't always shout out every comment, but we read it. Yeah, I mean, if you say something that's like hate filled or so on and so forth, we're not going to shout you out, but otherwise we will. Kelly M didn't think the letter to Hannah was going to work. That Josh dying might be a predestination event, always meant to happen. Well, Kelly, you certainly nailed the nail on the head this time
That's
because
something to talk about.
you were
Yeah.
pretty correct. She also thanked us for her shout out in the Scott Bakula video and said we forgot to mention that we met Scott Bakula in that video.
Did we?
I think we did. All right, so Amanda has a comment. I'm just going to read it verbatim because it's quite long, but it's pretty good.
Okay.
Um, she said that she was not a fan of this episode personally. This is last week's episode. Um, I want the show to succeed, so I will watch every episode, even if I loathe it with every fiber of my being. Getting that out of the way, the Time and Addison story completely fell flat for her. On a positive note, he thinks that Caitlin's facial expressions spoke volumes throughout the episode. He gave me the impression that Addison was remembering why she fell in love with Ben all over again. Overall, I think the actors did a great job, but the writing, in my opinion, failed to do justice to a nice idea for the various story points. The idea of Addison realizing she needs some space from Tom to sort her feelings out is completely understandable. I think it's unfair to Tom the way they presented that. It just felt to me, at least, that the writers tried to cause more tension than was necessary. It made the entire story feel ingenuine. My understanding concerning chest binding is that doing so can cause tissue damage. So that's the reason for that being an issue. Um, she liked the idea of the treasure hunt bringing the siblings together. Excuse me. I should have gotten a soda or something before I started talking. But the storyline was a bit cheesy, but was still a fun story. Their dad came across to me as a likable person who relatably hyper focused on something to the detriment of what was important. I think the writers could have cut everything else out, focused on just that story, and I would have enjoyed it much more. Additionally, I would be perfectly happy if they'd taken the Ass and Tom story and the Gideon story as its own episode. I know the crazy idea, but they could have just had an episode at Project Quantum Leap. There were several points in the series where I would have also liked to have seen more Project Quantum Leap. In my opinion, this episode was too much all at once, and most of it felt rushed. So here's a thought about that picture hiding treasure. If one of the sisters ended up living in the house, it's quite possible they never moved the picture, or if they did, would have necessarily have thought wouldn't have necessarily thought that something was hidden behind those boards. If you weren't in the headspace of looking for treasure, you might think someone accidentally punching a hole in the wall, then used the board to close the hole and the picture to hide it. Even worse, if they decided to sell the house, they might have had someone else help take care of things, and that person might have seen it as an unsightly hole that was subsequently plastered over without ever moving the board. Those gems would have been conceivably been still hidden in the wall in the present day. Do you buy any of that?
I mean, yeah, maybe it's a good explanation as anything else.
Okay. And
Maybe not everyone is like my family who, you see something odd in a house, you're going to go digging deeper to spot, look for treasure.
yeah, I generally don't look for treasure myself, but you never know. That's why I'm never going to find gems somewhere hidden in my wall. That letter, yeah, that seemed weak. If you want to do the future letter right, you got to take cues from Doc Brown and pay for UPS to deliver this letter on a specific date for this specific reason. Uh, don't be vague, Ben. She
Yeah.
could have very easily forgotten about the letter, lose it, or open it out of curiosity, which is all stuff that you actually
All
brought up.
stuff that I said, but I was thinking about it more during the week. Like last week when we talked about it, I was very critical. Like, why'd you give it to Sarah? There had to be a better option. But thinking about it more, Ben didn't know when he was going to leave, right? As far as he knew, he was done and he was going to leave any second. So
Right.
handing it to the person that was literally in the room with him seemed probably like the best option to him, given the fact that he didn't know if he was going to have time to go find someone else to hand this letter to.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if it failed, he could have tried again, like at some other point in the future, or maybe you left into a more convenient time. Um, it was definitely worth the attempt, and much as my surprise, that actually worked.
Yeah.
And they're kind of low key about that in this episode. But all right, so that's all the shout outs I got. There was a birthday or something that I think we might have forgotten about.
Oh, somebody had a birthday this week. Yes. Who had a birthday?
You know what? I can't. I don't know. Someone.
I don't have her name in the top of my head. The actress who played Annie in Dr. Ruth.
Oh yes, Robin Lively, right?
Yes, Robin Lively.
Okay.
She had a birthday this week. Is that the
Yeah,
one you were thinking of?
yes, that was the one.
All right.
She
Happy
was
birthday,
also
Robin.
Yeah, she was also in Karate Kid 3 as one of Daniel's. I mean, that situation was kind of weird. It wouldn't be quite a love interest. They were more friends. And then she actually showed up in a couple episodes of Cobra Kai, this most recent season. So happy birthday to Robin Lively.
All
All
right.
right. You have some
Um,
background stuff from last
I
week?
do have some more tidbits about family treasure. First of all, there was amazing interviews this past week. Both Fate's Wide Wheel and Quantum Leap Podcast put out tons of interviews based on Family Treasure, and learned a lot from that. The most interesting tidbit, which is something that I didn't know until hearing those interviews, the story was originally written to have 4 siblings in it.
Okay.
And that makes just so much sense to me why the number 4 kept repeating throughout this episode. There were 4 pieces of the treasure map, 4 clues, 4 petals on the flower, 4 turns of the key. And that's where all that came from, is there were 4 siblings. But the night before filming began, one of the actresses dropped out. She had a stomach bug or something. And she was actually supposed to play Sarah.
Okay.
Okay. And then Holly Habar, who ended up playing Sarah, was supposed to play an even older sister. So Sarah was the second daughter, and she had an even older sister who Holly was supposed to play. And that character was supposed to be the one that really wanted to go on the treasure hunt. They didn't say explicitly, but I'm guessing that means they're the one who was supposed to die in Mexico in the original history.
Right.
And at 9 p.m., the night before they started shooting, they had to reshift everything. And Shakina went and edited the script at 9 p.m. before their shoot. And Holly had to adapt to play a completely different character than what she had prepped for. And then, so that character was cut out of the story. And then both Sarah and Dean ended up taking on some of the lines that belonged to that other character. Specifically, where Dean became the one who really wanted to go on this adventure. And again, Holly was originally supposed to play that character. So she kept some of those parts that went to Sarah, but the whole personality of Sarah was something that she hadn't prepped for at all. So I think knowing that, they did a really great job.
Yeah, I mean, given all those challenges, that it's remarkable they did as good as acting job as they did, and that the story was as coherent as it turned out to be.
Right. Yeah. And knowing that, it makes a lot of sense. So if anybody hasn't watched those videos, those interviews, definitely go check out. Fate's Wide Wheel did an interview with Shakina, and then Quantum Leap Podcast did one with Holly, did one with Wilder Yari, and did a commentary with Jude Wang and Shakina. So lots and lots of great content over there. Another thing I learned from those is that Jude Wang, when directing this episode, took the most inspiration from the Goonies. And she was constantly telling the cast to Goonie up when they were prepping for a scene. Well, Shakina wrote it more from a perspective of all of those great 1980s adventures movies, not only the Goonies, but Indiana Jones and Romancing the Stone were mentioned a lot as inspirations.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then I got a couple of notes from the writer's room on Twitter X. And first, they reminded us that binding with elastic bandages, as Dean is shown doing, is dangerous, and that nowadays there are safe and comfortable binders that can be purchased online. So they wanted to reinforce that point. So we will reinforce that as well. The spot where the flood scene was filmed is an iconic attraction on the Universal Studios tour.
There were more than a few people who pointed that out.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people discussing
about
that. They're like, hey, I recognize that spot.
Right.
Because, well, yeah, this is a Universal show. They're shooting at Universal Studios. So,
right.
Yeah. And the rocks that they hid behind during the flood is the same spot that Lady Gaga stands on in her music video for Judas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not familiar with that, but same rocks.
Is that it for your notes?
That's all I got to look back at the family treasure.
All right. Well, a few more points before we actually move on to talking about the episode. One, there was some controversy, as we expected, coming into this episode. There was quite a bit of hate in the Quantum Leap groups. I don't want to talk too much about that, but there was a dynamic that I did notice that I wanted to comment on. Mainly, there were people who had legitimate complaints, and inevitably, I would see people who would post these complaints, and then you'd have the woke crowd be like, oh, it's because the show is woke.
Right.
And then they would unfairly end up getting, lumped in with those people that have those type of complaints. And
Right.
it made for a very toxic conversation, in my opinion. It made it
Hmm.
impossible to have a productive conversation, productive, critical conversation about the episode. And I think that's highly unfortunate. But I think that actually goes beyond just this episode and even beyond the series. I think it's a general problem at large with trying to have these conversations that makes it really hard to have productive and productive conversations of any kind surrounding these issues.
Yeah.
And I find that unfortunate.
Hmm. As far as like the reception of Family Treasure, excluding the super haters that we knew were going to hate on the episode, people who
Right.
actually like the series, I saw a really mixed reception. I saw people saying, "This is my favorite episode ever." And I saw other
Right.
people saying, "Oh, this is my least favorite episode ever."
Uh,
And not that we're specifically
Now, some
saying
of those
for those
people who,
reasons. So,
yeah, some of those people who said that also said they liked Let Them Play.
right,
So, yeah. So, it is possible to not like this episode
right.
and not be people bigot.
And it's
There's,
something that we've talked about a lot. The fact that this
mm,
show just covers every genre in existence,
yeah.
um, every topic you can think of, comes up at some point in a Quantum Leap story.
Mm,
And that's just what's great about it. You're not going to love every episode.
right.
You're not going to love every story. And somebody else is going to.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's, it,
it's a really kind of it's I feel like it's unique. I mean, I'm sure there's
mm,
other series that you can say the same thing about, but it's different from most shows, right? You're not going to
right.
have that consistent back and forth of who likes which episodes. And I feel like that's just a really fun dynamic about Quantum Leap, that
Hmm.
there is something for everyone.
Right. Okay. So, anything else on that topic?
No, no.
All right. Moving on. Okay. So, the ratings were down again for
Yes.
last week's episode. They were down to 1.6. That represents million people, right?
Yeah, for live viewing.
Right. Live viewing. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned here. I think there's reason for concern
There
about
is reason
renewal
for
for season three.
concern.
Yeah.
I am hopeful that this episode, The Outsider, more people come out for, with Deborah Pratt's name attached to it. I've been really pushing that on my socials and just trying to get a more active audience. The problem is so many people are like, yeah, I'm going to watch it as soon as I can tomorrow because I'm not watching a show at 10 p.m.
Right. The time slot is a major problem.
It is. It really is. And we don't know what the Peacock numbers are. Like,
I
they
mean,
don't share that.
last year the show got renewed for a second season based off of those numbers.
Right.
It didn't get renewed off of live numbers. Uh, we don't really know this year if those numbers are strong or not.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, for all we know, those numbers could be still quite good, and we have
Right.
no issue here.
But they
But we don't
haven't
know that right
been
now.
sharing that information, which
Right.
is also a little concerning that they're not telling us, like, hey, we're doing great.
Right.
So yeah, there is a reason to be concerned that we might not get a renewal. And I just think it's more important than ever for everybody who does love this show, who loves Quantum Leap and wants to get more Quantum Leap. And, even if you think there's room for improvement, if you want a third season to give them the chance to grow, it's important right now to let NBC know. Interact with NBC's tweets, hashtag Quantum Leap on your socials, talk about the episodes. Even the haters talking about the episodes are helping because they are, helping to trend the name Quantum Leap. So even them,
Right.
like, that's okay. Keep talking about the show. Stop being rude and disrespectful and using hateful language, but talk about the show. Even if you don't, have 100% great things to say, talk about the show. It helps. And you can send an email to NBC if that's as much effort as you want to put in, but a physical letter is better. And just say, hey, I love this show and I want to see more. That's all it takes, is for them to
Mm,
know people want this. because they have to show their advertisers that there's a reason to advertise on Quantum Leap. That's the point of television.
Right.
The point of television is to sell advertising. So if we can convince NBC to convince the advertisers, then we get another season. That's all there is to
Yeah.
it.
Now, I would agree there's been some issues with this season. I don't think it was as strong as last season, but I think a lot of that comes down to the writer's strike. There was a
Right.
writer's strike, and that disrupted production,
Right.
especially in this back half of the season.
Yeah, and the fact that they had such a long break between filming of 108 and 109, like there is kind of a little disconnect there, you know.
Mhm.
And that's just how it is. That's how
Right.
television is. I'm eager to, once this season's over, we only got one more week. Oh my goodness. Once it's over, to go back and rewatch the whole season, like, to binge it and to just see how it flows as a full season. Because I haven't done that. I haven't gone back to any of the episodes after the time they've aired
Right.
as of yet.
Yeah.
And because right now I don't know, like if we're gonna do our ratings again of ranking the episodes,
We could
I
do
don't
that.
know where I stand.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the episodes are very similar to each other in quality. I think there's only like a few episodes that really stand out. Um, and hopefully one of those episodes will be the last two episodes of the season. The rest are kind of like similar in quality, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's been a consistent season, but there's not been a whole lot that like super stands out in my
Yeah.
mind.
I mean, it's we said this before too. It's different than season one, right? Because season one, we had a overall story that we were plugging our way through while dealing with these leaps. And in this season, it's not exactly clear what the story is they're trying to tell,
Right.
even though we know they're trying to tell one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to really know how I feel about that until we finish the last two episodes. And then I can be
Right.
like, oh, here's how it all pulls together or how it doesn't.
Exactly. Hmm. Yeah. The last couple episodes, which will air next week, uh, that will go a long way towards determining how the overall story for this season actually was.
Right. And
Do we have anything else?
I still feel like they're going to pull it together pretty good. They're
Well,
running out of time, but I remember saying that last year.
we did say that a lot last season.
Yeah. But I kind of feel like the pieces are starting to fall together between the Hannah story and the Chip story. I definitely think they're gonna still like come together to congeal as like one story. I think it's gonna make sense.
Well, let's hope. Praise be. In case you didn't notice, I've been watching a little bit Handmaid's Tale.
I
That would be
caught
your
that.
influence. Yeah, and I just hear that phrase in my head now
When
quite
I was
often.
watching that show, which was just a couple months ago, I binged the whole Handmaid's Tale. I like wanted to say that like to people. Like it just felt normal, right?
Right. Yeah. It's a good show. Elizabeth Moss is excellent in it. Uh, it's definitely a very tough watch for sure. To get through. But
Yeah.
anyway, back to Quantum Leap.
Anyways, let's talk about
Do
the
we have anything else to
outsider.
say? What's that?
So let's
Oh
talk
yes,
about
let's
the
talk about the
outsider.
outsider.
Yeah, that's what we're
Uh,
here for.
right. Do we have anything else to say about anything else before diving into the actually, Stacie, your overall thoughts about this episode?
Okay, yeah, the outsider now.
Yes.
I really enjoyed this episode. It felt a lot like a classic episode where
Uh-huh.
we're really like digging into people's lives. There is an overall like larger thing at stake here. Obviously, we're talking about thousands of cancer patients, but on the surface, we're talking about, this journalist and fixing her career, and it felt like a simpler story
Uh-huh.
than like, oh, there's this huge catastrophic event that we're dealing with in this moment. Which is, I saw a lot of criticism I've seen lately is people say they want just more simple stories. And I
Yeah,
feel like this is it. I feel like this was a more personal story.
I'm more in that crowd. I definitely want more personal stories than the larger, bigger stories. Yeah, and I generally like this episode. I have some quibbles with it, but like I have quibbles with every single episode of television that ever aired.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, all in all, I thought it was pretty good. Deborah Pratt had some nice directing moments. It was definitely good to see her behind the camera again, getting that chance that she did not get in the original series.
Hmm.
So overall, she did a great job. Most of my issues, I think, are on the writing side of things
Okay.
than anything else. But yeah, so
As far as like comparing this to original series episodes, which we like to do, the only thing that I was really reminiscent about was Roberto, because
that was the
obviously
closest
the
analog.
journalism angle. We do get a nod to they mentioned Watergate, which instantly pulls up Starcrossed, right? Although nothing at all connecting these episodes, but just the mention of Watergate makes me think of Starcrossed.
You know what the
Uh,
most funny connection that I had when watching this episode was Bruce Almighty, a Jim Carrey movie, where I mean his character in there was never like a high a thing at the time. He was like trying to break into the industry,
uh-huh.
but the whole filming of the pumpkin patch part of the episode that kind of reminded me of some him doing the big cookie and stuff like that in that movie.
Okay.
He basically did fluff pieces
Yeah.
in that movie at the start of it before he became God and was able to do whatever the heck he wanted.
Gotcha.
So I
Um,
mean, it was like a little bit of connection to that movie at the very beginning.
yeah. Um, just back to Starcross for 1 second. The reason I think that's important because that was Deborah Pratt's first episode she wrote.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. Which in which she named the host after her mother, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask her, why did you pick such a horrible character to name after your mother? But
Well, we could always bring her back and talk to her, or we could try anyway.
she's actually where is she? Somewhere right now. Oh, I'm gonna look. You keep talking
She
for a
is
second.
definitely somewhere,
You keep
that's for sure.
talking for a second while I look at what I'm trying
Okay.
to say.
All right. So Stacey's looking up that name. I'm gonna try to think of something to say to fill the gap. So far, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But yeah. Um, any luck?
I'm working on it. Okay, she's in Uganda.
Uganda.
She's on an adventure in Uganda,
What is she doing in Uganda?
having an adventure.
Okay.
I'm not sure
She has no
exactly.
specific reason to be there.
I'm sure she does. I don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, that's certainly interesting.
Yeah.
All
So
right. So do we have
Deborah,
anything else
if
to
you're
say?
if you listen to this, we hope you're having an amazing time.
Yeah. And you can come on our show and talk about your trip to Uganda if you want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What were we talking about even?
The Outsider?
The Outsider. All right, why don't we just get into it? And anything else we have to
All
say
right.
to come up along the way?
Oh, yeah. The one thing that does also occur to me is the episode title reminds me of a series called The Outsider, which was an HBO series based miniseries based on the Stephen King book. There's
Mhm.
no connection whatsoever, but the title made me think of
Yeah,
that.
now that you say that, the title The Outsider, I'm not sure I understand that title for this episode.
I don't either. I can't think of a
Okay.
connection. That
I,
makes
I'm not
sense.
sure I get exactly what they're referencing,
Right. All right.
specific
So,
to this story. And the other thing that I did want to bring up that now I remember we were talking about like episodes that this is that we think of influence. This also like the overall like, hey, we're saving hundreds of people from getting cancer, like that whole storyline. Reminded me of Paging Dr. Song,
okay.
where
Yeah.
the whole thing there was let's stop this product from being used that's gonna kill people.
Or heck, Aaron Brockovich had that basic plot.
Right. But I mean talking quantum leap.
Right. Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
so
Diving into this thing,
dive on
scene by
in.
scene.
Now, uh, before we do scene by scene, I just want to say the date of the leap um, is important to me today because trying to figure out exactly when this episode takes place.
Mhm.
And I don't think an exact date was explicitly said in the episode.
Yeah.
Brian over at Al's place lists it as October 6th, 19 1982.
Hmm.
And I asked him, was that date explicitly said or did you estimate? And he said, yeah, he estimated because the one date we know for sure is the lunch that Ben's host had with the lawyer was on October 4th.
Okay.
So we saw that in their planning book. So October 4th, 1982 was the lunch, and we're told that was a couple of days ago.
So it'd be October 6th, right?
Right. So that's what Brian put was October 6th. But the use of the word a couple days, I mean, if you get real technical, that should mean 2 days and it should be October 6th. But that's a phrase that's used lightly, right? Where we could be off a day or two.
Could be like a week off or, 2
Right.
weeks.
So if this starts on October 6th, the leap takes place from October 6th through 8th. And I was just really tracking that and looking at, okay, when are we at nighttime? When is it morning again? Because I was born on October 9th, 1982.
Oh, okay.
So if that's accurate that we leaped in on the 6th, we just missed it. But if he leaped in on the 7th, then the conclusion of this episode takes place the day I was born.
Nice.
So we're right in there somewhere. It's the closest I've gotten to a leap taking place around my date of birth.
Gotcha. Well,
Which
this episode definitely
notable to mention. I know we've said this lots of times before, but I do share a birthday with Scott Bakula.
right. So
Different
that's coming up.
year, but
Well,
October 9th.
yeah, it's not coming up anytime soon, but
All right. So it's potentially October 6th, and Ben leaps in.
yep. And by the way, I'm already born. I'm alive at this point. So this episode takes place within my lifetime. All right. So the episode opens ominously with Ben on the phone. He's clearly talking to a source who's pissed at Ben for talking to someone, saying he's out, he's not gonna do this anymore, and that a lot of people are gonna die because of him.
Yeah, they say
Um,
they know, and this source tells Ben that his host talked to a suit at Kaplan.
hmm. So he ends up getting hung up on, and then there's a knock on the phone booth that he happens to be in, from someone that we don't know quite yet, who asks, and as they walk, she asks him if he checked the battery. Ben is confused, sees his mirror image, so we do see it very briefly in a
Yeah,
reflection,
a
and
reflection
then
in a
realizes that,
window.
yep, she then real oh yeah, he then realizes that she is a reporter, and he says this out loud, which makes her question if he's drunk because she
Yeah.
had to fire the last producer for drinking.
And he looks
Uh,
at his press badge that he's
mhm.
wearing. His host name is Brian Conway, and he's the producer at KXYC Eyewitness News.
Now, my question is, I don't quite know what a producer does, but he's not a reporter.
He's
So
the
would
cameraman, and so I guess he produces her specific content.
so would he have sources?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was my question throughout the episode. He acts like he's a reporter, but he's
Well,
not actually a reporter.
I'm thinking that, because Connie is so reluctant to actually do anything, that when he found a lead, he's following it up on his own because she's not interested. I mean, he's
Okay.
a journalist, right? Even though his
Mhm.
title isn't that he's the reporter, it's his job to, work with her to produce good news.
Okay. All right. So as they go to the band, Ben says he was on the phone with someone that said people were gonna die. This is something she doesn't take seriously because everyone wants to report on them because they think she's Connie Davis from New York. And Ben is like, well, you're not Connie Davis? And she thinks he's being sarcastic, but he really doesn't know.
Right.
And she says she's not the Connie Davis that she used to be before some unspecified incident in New York. Um,
And Connie Davis is played by Nadine Ellis.
yeah, I didn't get a chance to look into her. Yeah, I intended to do my notes last night, but I came home with a massive headache, so I ended up doing them this morning instead.
Ah, yeah, I don't have IMDb credits for any of the actors. I didn't get that far, unfortunately, myself either. And my neighbors are snow blowing right now, so I don't know if that sound's coming through, but if it is, I apologize.
I don't hear anything, but that doesn't mean anything for what's going on at your end.
Yeah, this mic tends to pick up weird things, right?
Right. She tells Ben not to mess this up for her, the story. And it's apparently the biggest story she's had in months. And we cut to some kind of pumpkin contest.
We are at the Rustic Roots Farm, and we're talking to Farmer Steve. Farmer Steve is played by Bill Parks, and his wife Nancy, who is pregnant, and she's played by Taza Veter. I'm sure I got that wrong.
So they're doing this little interview with these farmers, these two people, and Addison appears when Ben is filming, and he says that he needs to take 5. Why he couldn't just wait for the report to be finished is beyond me. But he makes a lame excuse for why he needs to go talk to Addison. He's like, the battery is dead.
The battery's dead after she had just told him, make sure the batteries are all charged.
Right. So he's not making a great impression here.
Yeah, he's making his also look pretty incompetent.
He doesn't really make a good job of trying to cover for this. He walks like 3 feet away, doesn't even go to the van, and he's talking to himself in the middle of a field.
That's a good point. If you're going to get a new battery, you should have gone all the way into the van to do it.
Right. But I guess Ben feels like being lazy this week.
But Patty didn't seem to notice. She was quite enjoying her conversation with the farmer and his wife. And the news piece, by the way, is that he's got 1,000-pound pumpkin here at Rustic Roots Farms, which Farmer Steve attributes to working, waiting, and weed killer.
And we do get like an ominous shot of the wife like coughing.
Yes,
she's coughing. That we don't understand.
Yeah, every time we see her in this episode, which is a couple times, she's just coughing like horrifically.
Right. Ben ends up asking Addison if the letter worked, and apparently it did. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, we confirmed that they were able to catch Josh's heart disease in time, and he lived through that.
But then he ends up dying a year later in a car crash. And that's where Kelly, got that right because, basically they made an attempt to save his life, but he died anyway.
Yeah. So it certainly makes it seem like he's destined to die, right? A little kind of Final Destination-ish there.
Right.
Although,
unfortunately, I guess there's not
save him again. He could if he leaps into the right time.
Right. Maybe next time he'll die in a race car accident or something.
I was trying to figure this out, and I didn't actually end up doing the math, but I meant to. When does Josh die now? Like what year?
Well, wasn't it originally 18 months after the leap in 1970? So that'd be 71 that he was originally supposed to die, I guess.
Yeah, 71
72?
72. So we're 72, right. 73 now for the car accident.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what our leap date is next week, but it is in the 70s. So
I believe it's 74. I think that was mentioned in the episode description.
Okay.
And that is
so if that's the case, the accident would have already happened. Okay. I just wanted to get grounded there for where we are with that situation.
Yeah. So he ends up asking for Hannah's phone number, and Addison ends up giving it to him.
Yeah, she looks reluctant just for a second. But I don't think overall we're too concerned about leaping protocols and not changing the future because we've abandoned that completely now, right?
Right, basically. Addison asks if they can focus on the leap, and they talk about Connie Davis, who at the height of her career was compared pretty comparably to Barbara Walters. She was pretty up there, but got fired for unspecified, or actually, it didn't even mention that she got fired. I don't think that's
at this point they did mention that. Yeah, I have that in my notes that she was fired in New York, and it had something to do with a source, but Addison didn't know what.
Well, later on, doesn't Connie say that she quit?
I don't know.
Okay,
but I definitely have in my notes here that Addison said she was fired.
Okay, so he thinks he's there to put her career back on track, and it should be an easy assignment with her covering 1,000-pound pumpkins.
Right. Which, he thinks
that should be news.
It is news, but it's just not high journalism news.
Right.
And that phone number, by the way, Addison gave Hannah's phone number. So in 1982, Hannah's phone number is 415-174-5683. And I looked up that 415 area code. It's San Francisco, California.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if they're actually, paid attention to what numbers they're using, Hannah has sometime between 1970 and 1982 moved to San Francisco.
Oh, I mean, that's certainly
Presumably after
plausible.
Josh died would be my guess.
Right. I was
So
actually
if
tempted.
we land in San Francisco next week, I mean, she is in next week's episode. I know that already, just based on the description. But I don't know where it takes place, though. I don't know if it said that. But she's living in San Francisco in '82, according to this phone number. So at some point, she's moving to California.
Right. We're going 8 years backwards, though. So,
Right. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that they used a San Francisco area code and not a New Jersey one.
mm,
So I don't know if that'll come up, but that's what that number tells us. Although the 174 is not a real exchange related to that area code.
no. So if I called that number, it wouldn't work.
No, it would not. They did all right there of using a fake number without putting a 555 on it. But yeah, I just found that interesting. 415 is San Francisco,
Hmm.
which isn't all that far from Quantum Leap.
Oh yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, in present day. So
Right.
if we're trying to make sense that, we end up with a 100-year-old Hannah at the project, we're putting her in the right direction.
Right. I was kind of hoping to try calling her, but I guess that probably wouldn't work.
Well, he did try calling her.
I mean, I wanted to try calling her.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I mean, she would even in our timeline would be quite old at this point. All right, so back at the project, Gideon is talking to Magic and Jen. Gideon developed. Oh no, not Jan or Jen. It's Ian.
Magic and Ian.
Right. Gideon says that he developed a chip, and Ian won't give it back. Magic is clearly getting angry as he listens to this, and the Pentagon is apparently taking Gideon's side. Gideon has a meeting, like a breakfast or lunch meeting or something along those lines, and Magic says he'll work this out, and a DoD representative will be there in the morning to help him out with that.
Yeah, to make sure
Ian,
that he sorts it out. And
right.
it's notable that during this whole meeting, Gideon has taken over Magic's office. He's sitting behind Magic's desk,
Yeah,
feet up on the desk, and Magic is sitting in the visitor's chair.
I didn't get what that was about. Like, it's still Magic's office, so why is Gideon sitting in Magic's chair?
Because he's expressing that he's the big guy here.
Oh,
He is,
okay.
he is more important than anybody at this project.
Mm-hmm.
And according to him, the Pentagon thinks that his tech is so much more valuable than this project. Of course, we don't know how much Gideon knows about what the project is.
Right.
I think he knows everything, anyways, but the whole point of him not getting the data was to hide the fact that this project is actually about time travel, which, even among, people who are in the know with the government, they don't know what the project actually is unless
Right.
you're like have super clearance for this specific project.
Now,
So Gideon's
my
not supposed to know they're doing time travel.
right. My thing is, so the Pentagon is like, they're favoring Gideon, thinking that this his tech is more valuable. But wouldn't they still have a problem with him trying to steal Quantum Leap's secrets? Wouldn't that be an issue?
Right. And I feel like that never came up
No.
because, Magic doesn't want to know anything. He doesn't want to hear anybody's side to this. And it feels like all that we've gotten to so far throughout this episode was we're dealing with the fact that Ian didn't steal the chip, but stole the technology of the chip whenever Rachel did what she did.
All right. So Ian starts to try to explain himself after Gideon leaves, but Magic tells him to log out of everything and go home. Uh, Jen tries to defend him, but Magic says that what they've done has consequences he can't protect them from, and throws her out of the office too.
Yeah, he's very
All right.
cold with both of them.
I get that Magic is angry here, but he doesn't want to hear Ian out to find out exactly what this was all about.
Right, exactly. I would think that Magic would want to know every detail in this
Right.
moment. We're way past that point of reasonable deniability.
Right.
Right? Like at the
I
beginning, even at the beginning of the season, that was one of Ian's reasons for not wanting to share anything is, if you don't know about this, you can't be held accountable for it.
right. And I
But
kind
we're
of felt like
past
this
that.
was
We are way past
yeah.
that. Magic needs to know the details at this point in time.
Yeah, I feel like this was a little bit out of character for Magic. Like I feel like he wouldn't handle it this way. He would at least heard Ian out, no matter how angry he
Magic's
was.
really upset, and I think maybe he's really upset with himself for not realizing that all this stuff's going on behind his back. Maybe
Hmm,
he's blaming himself for just not being a good leader by not even knowing that this was happening. And now he feels like he doesn't know how he can fix it.
gotcha.
I,
Makes
I feel
sense.
like he's probably more mad at himself than he is at them.
All right. So back in the past, Ben tries to pump up Connie, but it doesn't work out. She doesn't want to take the, like Ben's encouragement to try to get back out there. He says she ends up calling him out for forgetting tape in the van and says that he needs to get it together if he's going to keep working there. Alone, Ben thinks he hears a noise, thinks it might be Addison, but then he makes a phone call to Hannah
Yeah, he sees some
and he gets
phones,
a voice
some
message.
payphones
Now,
there. And
yeah,
even though he thinks someone's listening to him, he's like, oh, look, there's a phone. I can call her now. He's very distracted.
yeah. It's so we hear her voice, which is the only reason that Eliza Taylor is credited in this episode.
Right.
That's her appearance for this episode. Did you happen to catch the name that she used?
It was their name. She said this is the Nally residence, which was
Okay,
Josh's
so that
last
was
name.
that was Josh's last name.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so she hasn't changed that.
She hasn't changed. Yeah, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, did she get remarried? And then I listened
Yeah,
again. I
that's
was
what I
like, oh
thought
no,
too.
they said Nally. Nally is Josh's name. So that's, her and Jeffrey's last name.
Gotcha. Okay, so after he hangs up the phone, he's then threatened by a masked man with a gun who tells him to leave the story alone. Then says, "Well, I don't know about much about it in the first place." The guy fires the gun, but there's no bullet in it. And he says, "Next time it will be loaded," and then proceeds to hit Ben on the head with the gun, knocking him out, or just causing injury. I'm probably not knocked out.
Yeah,
And
hits
then
him
we have
over
our
the head,
credits, and
runs
I'm like,
away. And we see right away in the next scene that Ben does have a head wound. He's bleeding. And
mm,
uh what's her name? Connie is cleaning him up. I have Grace in my notes. I don't know why I
Grace.
started calling Connie Grace in multiple places. I don't know where
Yeah,
that came
you
from.
must have gotten confused with which show you were watching, because
Yeah,
confusing it with extended family.
I don't know.
All right, so yeah, Connie is giving Ben crap, saying she told him to drop the story. Their editor happens upon them and wonders what happened to Ben. She comes up with a lame story to cover for it, and after he leaves, she says, "I did you a favor." Uh, she she tells Ben that the number one rule of journalism is to do the work, and maybe in a couple of years he will catch the big break. But
Yeah,
my thing is, if he has a story now, why wouldn't he pursue the story now? Why
because
would he wait a couple
she's not
years?
ready to hear it.
Right.
She thinks that he's just pulling up nothingness, and she hasn't caught on yet that there's actually something going on that Ben's host has some information about.
Well,
And
usually
that
if you
that
have a
other
man pointing a gun at you, that's an
right,
indication that there's something going on.
right.
You don't have people shooting you for nothing.
Uh, that other the person there. What did you call him? The editor.
Yeah, I thought he was like the main editor guy.
I wrote that he was the station boss. I don't know
Okay.
exactly what his job is, but the character's name is Davidson Best, and he's played by John Marshall Jones.
And I meant to look him up because he does definitely look familiar.
Yeah, I think
Um,
all of these people have some significant credits, but I unfortunately didn't write down what any of them were.
yeah, this week I didn't end up looking up any of them like I usually would. Like I said, I didn't really give myself a whole bunch of time to do my homework this week.
Yeah, it's we've been very busy the last couple weeks. There's
Yeah,
a lot going on around here.
yeah. Oh yeah, and yeah, I forgot to shout out Julia and the Beeman Middle School at the top. She had a play. She was in Shrek the Musical that we went and saw. It's the best version of Shrek the Musical I've ever seen,
Yeah.
mainly because it's the only time I've ever seen it. But nevertheless, shout out for the Beeman Middle School and my daughter Julia. who
Yeah,
was in her
Juliet
first
made
play.
a great Goldilocks and Rat.
Yes. No one could have played that part better, I don't think. Anyway, so Addison appears to ask, why is he always covered in blood? And she thinks the leap may be tougher than she thought because he is distracted by the Hannah and Josh situation. Ben doubts what he's doing with his life, and Addison says he's the best leaper that she knows. Going back to my joke, because he's the only leaper that she knows.
Well, I mean, there was Martinez.
Okay, fair.
She met
Yeah,
him.
sure. Okay, you're right. So Ben is not the only leaper, and I guess that Ben would rank higher than Martinez did.
Yeah, yeah.
She also reveals that she wanted to be a journalist in her younger days, which is news to Ben. So they get to work uncovering the story. They figure out he met with a lawyer named Lloyd. They're looking through records. Ben wonders why she never told him that she wanted to be a reporter, and she says it was before she met him, and she was allowed to have secrets. It seemed like they were getting a little bit flirty here, and I'm like, guys, stop that. Just knock it off.
Well, you skirted way deep into my notes.
Oh yeah,
Um, all right, one
I'll
thing
let you go.
I'll just interject a couple of things in there. um, I thought it cute that they kept comparing themselves to Woodward and Bernstein.
Yes,
That they continue that throughout the rest of the episode, and of course, Woodward and Bernstein being the journalists that were made famous by reporting on the Watergate scandal.
yep,
So they kept referring to each other as Woodward and Bernstein as they're really working together to figure this out, right? Because Connie is not interested in hearing any of it. Ben says, I gotta get the whole case together. I have to
right.
find out what's going on so I can present it to her. And this is where we saw the date of October 4th being the date that he met with the lawyer. And they're going through microfiche, which is it's funny, right? And Ben makes he says exactly what, like, as a viewer you want to say. He's like, couldn't Ziggy have just done this? Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it's not a good thing when your main character is pointing out the inconsistencies of your story
Yeah. He's like,
and pointing out how useless Ziggy is.
couldn't Ziggy, the supercomputer from the future, have gone through these records? And Addison's just says that Ziggy's been trying to get his hands on Kaplan's client list, but has been unsuccessful. Okay, but I mean, couldn't Ziggy literally go through these news records that you are physically going through to look for names?
Right.
Like,
And probably do it faster than he's currently
exactly,
doing it.
exactly, like exactly what you're doing. Uh, Ziggy could be doing that part of it, even though he can't find the client list that he's looking for. He could have went through these 35 years of news records
Right.
to get the same leads that you're finding.
Mhm. So they get back to it, and Ben determines to look into a guy named Chet, which I believe is the lawyer.
Yeah, okay. So they, like they said, there was 35 years of our microfiche of the newspapers they were going to go through, and they declared it's going to be an all-nighter. And I thought it was really awesome that Addison and Ben are working together. They're pulling an all-nighter for this. And we got my favorite shot of the whole episode. And that is Ben, they're drinking coffee. Ben puts down his coffee cup, and we progress hours through the night. By the moment he puts that coffee cup down, we get this shot where it like pans across the table, where suddenly the one coffee cup turns into like 8 of them. And we see, like,
Yeah.
that's how we flipped from him saying it's going to be an all-nighter to now the night has gone through and they've been working all night trying to get this information.
The one thing I really enjoyed about this episode is that Addison seemed to have an actual purpose to being around.
Yeah,
Whereas
she
opposed,
actually did a great job
yeah,
contributing this time.
as opposed to like in Off the Cuff where she's around and I'm like, why are you here? Like you're here walking along with Ben, but you have no information. You have no reason to be here right now.
Right.
And she did her job in the last episode, but she was barely a presence at the same time. There was no real interaction between Ben and Aston for the most part. It
Yeah.
was just kind of her in the background and like over here. And I didn't
Right.
like that so much. This episode was a good presentation of like them actually working together in an episode.
Mm-hmm.
as Hologram and Weepy,
Right.
as opposed to the last couple of episodes in my mind.
Right.
So Lesson goes back to the project, see Ian walking away from her, and Tom ends up saying that they can't talk to her. It turns out that he is the DOD representative that they sent, and she thinks that that might be a conflict of interest. Yes, I would think so. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he mentions that, well, they probably don't know what the deal is between the two of us, and come to think of it, neither do I. Well, either way, positive or negative, whether they're still together or not, this is the conflict of interest.
Right. I
Like,
mean, the fact that he was overseeing the project, that has nothing to do with the fact that he was dating Addison.
right.
Like, he was assigned to this project. That's a conflict of
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah. That in itself. Yeah.
Right.
Uh, so,
But she tells him to go easy on Ian.
and then she has to go back and help Ben. I mean, she just got back here, but she has to go back.
She was just coming to get to refill her coffee. And then
Ah,
some sound was going off. So something was telling her she has to get back in there. Maybe it was
I
because
guess,
Ben fell asleep. I don't know.
yeah. Ziggy was informing her that Ben had fallen asleep.
Right.
So he wakes up and he says that he found Chet is a CEO of a company that changed their name and is big in the future.
Yeah, that right now in
It,
82, their name is Herbicore.
yep.
And Addison says that in a few years, they changed their name to Agra United, and they manufacture a pesticide that in the present day is known as Root Out.
Mm,
And this meant something to her. She came to a big realization. And instead of them showing us her telling Ben this, we skip ahead to Ben bringing this information to Connie.
yeah, and he tells her that the company is going to go to market with a weed killer that is also going to kill humans. Thousands are going to die. And we cut to a commercial, which really confused me at first, uh, for the company Herbicor, and it's Chet, his brother, and some other random person in the
Yeah,
commercial.
we it was Chet. We meet Chet Barlow and his brother Robbie, and there was a farmer in it too, but he didn't have a line, so that farmer wasn't credited. And we
Mm,
saw their slogan, which is at Herbicor, we herbicare. How
good one.
perfectly 80s is that? And since
Yes.
this is the first time we are seeing these characters, the CEO, Chet Barlow, he's played by Matthew Polkamp, and his brother Robbie is played by Charlie Bowden.
Mm. So Connie wants to go ask questions, but first wants to ask Ben a question, which is, how do you know that people are going to get sick? And he says that the source told him that an estimated 1,000 people would come down with cancer. Ben reveals that he doesn't know who the source is, so they are dealing with a deep throat, which is another Watergate reference.
Right. That's three now.
Yep. She calls a cop to get the number that contacted Ben,
Right. Because
and
she
it turned.
states her rule number two of journalism, which is there's no such thing as a dead end.
Mm. And they find out that the source was the brother of the CEO, Robbie.
Right. The police, what he does is he gives them the phone number of what number called that payphone, that who Ben was talking to. And so they call the number themselves. And it was it was the office of Robbie that answered the phone. And
Mm.
they come to the conclusion, because that's who answered the phone was Robbie's office, was that Robbie's a whistleblower and he's trying to, put the company under, and that's who had called Ben. But couldn't it just as easily have been this assistant that answered the phone and said Robbie's not here that was the whistleblower?
I mean, it could have been.
It was a male voice that answered the phone and said Robbie's not here.
Right.
That could have been the person who's using this phone line that had called Ben.
It could have
But
been.
we glaze right over that, and it's definitely Robbie.
Right. So they find out where he's having lunch. They search for nearby places that he could have that are near the company. And the editor happens by them, and she lies to him, saying, "Oh, nothing's going on. Everything's fine." And then he goes away. Uh, they go and find Robbie, who is not pleased that they discovered him. They did a test, and a couple of farmers got tumors.
Well,
And
no,
no,
no, it was lab rats.
lab rats. Okay, I thought it was the farmers that got the tumors. Okay.
So, okay, so first of all, he said he'll only talk to them off the record. He's like,
Right.
I'm not going on the record saying any of this. He's very scared to put his name out there. Um, he said that they are testing it to local farmers, such
Gotcha.
as farmer, what was his name? Farmer Steve's pumpkin over there. He's one of their, we'll learn pretty soon. That's one of the tests. I mean, if you didn't already pick that up by him, mentioning weed killer at the beginning. Um, no, what he said is they passed it on to local farmers to test, even though it had already produced lung tumors in the lab rats that they had tested on.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there are no documented cases yet of people getting cancer from this, but when they did their lab tests, they knew that it produced lung tumors, but they sent it out to be tested with on actual like farms, anyways. Is what happened at this point in time.
Yeah, their reasoning for not for putting the product back still on the market is that it was easier to settle lawsuits, or it would not easier, but it would cost
Cheaper.
less money to settle lawsuits than to go back to formula, basically.
Right. We learned this memo exists that says it'd be cheaper to just settle with any potential victims than to pull the product this far
Mm,
along. So the product's going to get approval from the EPA. Is up for approval this month, and Robbie knows that it shouldn't get approved, basically.
right.
But we know, based on the future, that it does get approved, and millions of people, or not millions, thousands of people die.
The reason he ended up backing out is because Ben ended up talking to the lawyer, and now they know what he looks like, so they can't be seen talking to each other.
Right? Because Chet is suspicious now.
Right.
And Robbie says Chet has his ways, and that's when Ben realizes that the man in the ski mask was actually somebody working for Chet.
Mhm. Ben realizes that the farmer that they interviewed was one of the test subjects. And so they end up going to the farm and they find the herbivore stuff.
Right,
And
because there's barrels at the farm that say herbicrop, which is the name that the pesticide is going under at this point in time. That
right.
Robbie had mentioned that during their conversation.
The farmer drives up with a coughing wife. She's coughing pretty badly at this point. And they tell them that that Ben and Co ends up telling them that they need to go and get checked out. He's initially very hostile to them, but
Mm-hmm.
eventually agrees to go to the
Yeah,
hospital.
because Connie talks him down. So she's showing how she's like really good at this, like
Mhm.
talking to sources. She calms him down, tells them she's going to send them to the very best doctor in town in Denver, which is where we're at.
Now,
And
is she going to pay for that doctor, or is she just sending him to them?
I mean, I don't know, but she did a good job of convincing him to cooperate.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's going to be okay. You're going to go to the doctor. You're going to give us a soil sample so that we can take this to the EPA and, keep this from happening to anybody else.
Mm. So Connie is excited. She actually ends up getting a phone call about a big accident that happened downtown, and because of the work they're doing on this case, they get sent to do that.
Right. Well,
Uh,
not specifically the work they're doing on this case, because remember, they haven't told anybody yet.
right, yeah.
But he just saw that they've been working really hard lately.
Hmm.
And so is sending Connie to cover this story.
So at the incident, they start recording. Addison and Ben both end up recognizing that the car actually belongs to Robbie.
Yeah, and
So they
Addison
think,
again is doing a good job here. She's actually like
yeah.
up and investigating the vehicle. She's not just, standing next to Ben in the sidelines.
So, she's finally doing these things that we've been complaining she hasn't been through most of the series, basically.
Right. We were
Uh,
told that, the driver, before they even noticed that it was Robbie's car, we're told the driver died, and all that was left was the wallet and a watch. Um, and the body completely disintegrated. I find that pretty unfeasible just at the surface. Um, I don't think sitting in a car explosion for, a half hour is going to make a body completely disappear.
right,
Yet the wallet is still whole.
right,
I'm
yeah,
sure the wallet would disappear before, your skeleton would.
probably. So they end up showing. Oh yeah, so she kind of starts freaking out.
Yeah, she
And she ends
quits.
up, yeah.
She can't finish the broadcast.
So they end up showing the tape to the editor, but they won't explain the what led to this in the first place. And then she basically quits, or the story at least. Connie had and this is where we find out that Connie had a source that ended up killing themselves.
Right. That what happened
Connie
in
ends
New
up saying,
York was
"Yep,
that she got overzealous and she forced someone to talk before they were ready to talk. And then they ended up committing suicide as a result of that. And she said that's when she learned rule number 3, know when to quit.
So Connie ends up firing Ben so that he doesn't have to learn that the hard way.
Yeah, basically she's quitting. And if she's quitting, she doesn't need a producer. So she fires him and she's just done.
So Ian in the future, present day, whatever, gives their official statement to Tom, who wants to know why he didn't tell him the truth earlier in the season when he brought up the spikes to him, the power spikes.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian is basically like, I didn't want the project to get shut down.
Right.
Tom suggests,
They said the project was already shut down once and they were scared of losing Ben again.
hmm, Tom suggests he's going to have to recommend Ian be fired. He doesn't have the power to do that himself, but the pound of flesh has to come from somewhere, and it makes sense for it to be Ian. Ian ends up flipping out, saying that everyone quit on Ben when he disappeared, except for him, and that he is the only one who can decipher the code to get Ben home. What did I just say?
You said he.
Oh, I meant there or them, one of those. Um,
um,
yeah,
and also Ian points out the fact that if they get fired, they're not going to be able to decipher that the DARPA code, right? Ian's the only
right,
person
right.
capable of doing that,
Yep.
which is a very important note, right? Like if
Mm,
we stop working on that, Ben's not coming home, whether you keep the
hmm
project running or not.
right. Lesson
And I
reveals the.
go ahead.
No, what were we gonna say?
I don't know. Go ahead.
You forgot? Okay. Allison reveals to Ben that things are bad at the project. That he got engaged. See, I did it to her too. I just called him her a he. Um, that she got engaged to Tom and then got unengaged. So you get one bomb and then you get another right after the other.
Yeah, all last episode she wanted to tell him,
Yeah,
right? And she was trying to think of how to tell him that she got engaged. And she this at this point she's like, by the way, Tom and I got engaged. Then I got unengaged, like before he could even like respond. Meanwhile, Ben is sitting on the floor drinking from a flask. He is in the worst shape we've ever seen him.
yeah. She says that she was in reaction mode for a very long time and that she lost herself. After Ben disappeared initially.
And she says,
Uh,
then you died.
right.
And I'm just like, did he though?
Yeah, he didn't actually die. You
Because
just
I
declared him dead.
still, after all this, don't feel like she had a reason to believe he was dead.
Right. So apparently Robbie died in the original timeline, which is something she casually brings up.
Yeah.
Which
So in the original timeline, the ski mask dude scared the host Brian off of the story. So Brian and Connie had nothing to do with this at all. But
right.
Robbie still died in the same car explosion.
hmm
Which
Which makes
is
Ben
important because the reason Ben's drinking is because he's blaming himself. He's like,
right.
I'm supposed to be helping people, but I'm not doing a great job of it. I couldn't save Josh, and now I caused Robbie to die.
hmm
And
And this
Addison's
makes
like, no,
Ben
you didn't.
right. This makes Ben realize that Ben faked his own death.
That
Ben goes
Robbie faked his own death.
would yeah, right. Not Ben. He did not fake his death. Ben goes to Connie and gets himself unfired. He convinces her to rejoin the story with a decent speech, I should say. He's initially reluctant. She says that, Bobby not being dead doesn't mean anything, but it very much does. So Ben ends up convincing her to rejoin the story and to keep going. Meanwhile, Tom talks to Magic and says Ian can't be fired because Ian needs to keep working on the DARPA code to get Ben home. So Tom ends up suggesting Jen. And Magic clearly doesn't seem to like this idea very much. But Tom basically says that he feels that Magic should do whatever is the right thing to do to make the situation right.
Yeah.
basically.
But Magic says both Ian and Jen are family to him, and there is no quantum leap without them.
Uh-huh. So Ben and Connie go to the hotel room
Yeah,
where
they're
they,
at a hotel now, knocking on a
yeah,
hotel room door, and Connie's just like, "How do you know Robbie's here?" Because
right,
really, like, you'd have no leads in the real
right,
world, right? But
yeah,
Addison says that there's an a B Arlo staying in room 3 that's flying out in the morning. So it seems like a good guess that this is Barlow. Now, my take on this was if you changed your name from Barlow to B Arlo, that doesn't seem like a good enough cover that the world thought you were dead.
right,
That
yeah,
Ziggy literally thought this dude was dead. Like he never
hmm
popped back up again in
right,
history.
yeah. So they find Robbie and they talk to him and
They
they
talk
need to
about the
find
soil
evidence that,
sample.
yep, that the company knows the product is dangerous and should not be released. They convince Robbie to get a memo, which I'm surprised still exists. I mean, why would you keep that even in a safe? Why not just shred the document?
Yeah, I have that in my notes at the end that after they use this memo and came to the conclusion they're still going to go to market, shouldn't they have destroyed every copy of said memo?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, why keep that
the
incriminating
thing that
document?
makes you culpable for knowing that you're spreading cancer.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, so that he tells them that the memo exists and it's in a safe in Chet's office. And Robbie's reluctant during all of this because we find out his name is on the memo too. And he's,
Ah,
of course, worried about his reputation. It's not just Chet who signed the memo, he signed it as well. But you know
right.
what, Robbie, you're dead, right?
Yeah.
Like you faked your death. In the original history, you stayed dead. So why do you care if your name's on the memo?
Right.
You're starting a new life anyways. I don't know.
Right.
I found that whole like faking their death storyline a little weak.
Right. Yeah. Connie ends up going to talk to Chet. Basically, he is going to interview Chet. Ben goes to get the document by breaking into his office and the
Yeah.
safe
So
with the help of
basically,
Jen.
it's Connie brings in Davidson as her producer and tells Chet that her producer, which is Ben, quit because something spooked him. So we're basically telling Chet that, oh, ski mask worked and you scared him away and he's gone.
Right.
And, this here Davidson, he's going to do a great job filming this interview. So the whole thing is setting it up so that they're not suspicious about what they're really here for because they think Ben's not there. But meanwhile, Ben has Robbie's key code and is breaking into Chet's office with it.
Yeah, and they have Jen basically examining the safe for weak points, and the weak point turns out to be bash it really hard with something hard and break it open,
Yeah, because Jen was
essentially.
able to determine that this particular line of safe was going to be recalled very shortly because something is faulty with it.
Well, isn't that convenient?
So yeah, all he has to do is smack it.
Uh, okay, so uh, he meets up with the guy who wants to shoot him. Oh, he ends up meeting the guy who wants to shoot him in the office. This time he doesn't. He isn't wearing a mask. He's wearing a security outfit.
Yeah,
Uh,
so the guy comes in and Ben recognizes him as being Ski Mask. His real name is Wyatt Lee Smith, who I learned during this scene, and he is played by Daniel Kamen.
yeah,
And
he looked familiar too. I'm not sure why, but
the reason that he realized something was wrong is because uh, Robbie's key card was used, even though Robbie's supposed to be dead. So that's what sent him to investigate why is this key card being used.
right. But Ben reveals what information he does have on him and mentions that he has film of the whole ski mask scene, which he definitely doesn't have,
He definitely
and
doesn't
manages to
have.
talk.
He's totally faking this guy out right now and
Yeah,
using Addison to help convince him, like, hey, I know your name, I know where your mother is, and is able to just make the guy like pause a minute, right? And think, oh wait, maybe you do have something on me.
uh-huh. And then he ends up like bashing him over the head with the same thing that he broke the safe open with, too, right?
Yeah, it was like a trophy or something that was in Chet's
Yeah.
office, and he hits Wyatt with it.
Uh, Ben ends up getting the document, signals to Connie that he has it. Connie initially seems to end the interview,
Hmm.
but then Addison reveals that the product never goes to market. He asks about Connie and says, "Well, why don't you take a look at yourself?" And then Connie asks, "Oh, I have just one more question here." And this is kind of like a Columbo moment with Peter Falk saying, "I just have one more question, and this question happens to break open the entire case." But she ends up, basically using the document against him on air. Um,
Yeah, so she starts by just asking about Herbacrop, and he's like, "Oh, it's this great pesticide that's a pending EPA approval and it's coming to market soon." And she says, "Oh, like a little birdie told me that it was the secret to Denver's largest pumpkin." Like, so she's playing it off like she has a legit reason for asking about this because she just did that piece about the pumpkin. And he's like, "Yeah, it's great." And he gives that statement about, we Herba care about our farmers. And she goes, "Well, did you care that the farmer's wife likely caught lung cancer from your fertilizer?" She really did a great job of just kind of taking him off guard.
so
And then, of course,
Connie ends up getting
Ben
back into
comes
real,
out,
right.
right?
Yep.
And he's like, "It's you."
Yep. Oh, you didn't quit after all. You lied to me.
Yeah, he goes, "It's always me." It kind of felt like a little bit of a Scooby-Doo moment at the end there.
Right. So Connie goes back into real journalism, and Ben ends up weeping. Tom and Addison end up talking in back at the project. Tom thinks they were destined to be together, but that they were also fated to break up at the same time. Now, I will say, we complained quite a bit about the Addison and Tom stuff in the last episode. I think it was better handled here, but at the same time, it's kind of too little too late. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I
they did not,
understand everything that they are doing with this couple, and I get it.
right.
I just also don't care.
That's pretty much it. But I will say that that has absolutely nothing to do with the performers. They both do really well with this scene.
Yeah.
It just, I don't care.
And
They
they hug goodbye, and he tells her, "Bring Ben home."
mhm.
And he leaves. And I don't know, that might be the last time we see Tom.
It quite possibly. Yeah. So Magic ends up talking to Jen, and he says that they can't fire Ian because they need them to bring Ben home. And Jen starts to real think that she's about to get fired.
Right. Which
And
is
the way they
what we're
write
led
this,
to believe.
yeah, they write the scene in a way that suggests that it's definitely that they're going to fire Jen here.
Yeah.
But
But the good
instead,
news is that
yeah,
Gideon dropped all charges and is going to let Quantum Leap use his chip provisionally. So we're going to be above board now. Of
mm,
course, that's what Gideon's wanted the whole time, right? Because then they can get data about Quantum Leap. This was their whole
right,
goal.
right.
They don't want them to
And
stop using the chip. He just wants to have access to the data.
right. So Magic ends up saying that instead he is going to resign to give him Gideon his head instead of Jen's or Ian's. And yeah, and that's where the episode ends with
Yeah, this is
Magic resigning.
effective immediately. He is resigning from Quantum Leap,
So my question is, who's going to be the boss of Quantum Leap?
right? And then, of course, before we do any more discussion, we get our dedication title card. This
Yes,
episode is dedicated to our friend Matt Dale, who,
yes, yes.
who
Who
I'm happy
recently
to
passed
say
away.
was our friend.
Hmm.
Definitely a friend of everything Quantum Leap related.
Yeah. So it was very nice and moving to see them give tribute to Matt Dale for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if we talked about this. We probably didn't talk about this on the air, but I was happy when I learned that it was going to be Deborah Pratt's episode that
Hmm.
was going to be dedicated to Matt. Originally, they were saying 210, and then it came out that it was going to be 211, which is Deborah's episode. And that's just perfectly fitting, because Deborah and Matt did have a great friendship. Deborah wrote the foreword for Matt's book,
Yep.
and it felt like just the right place to put that.
Absolutely. All right. So, Magic gonna stay fired for the duration of the series?
I don't think so. I am pretty confident that in the next two episodes, we're going to fix all that.
Mm-hmm. Of course, in the
I,
next
I
two
don't
episodes
think that
might be the
magic is
series.
just gone.
Yeah. It is quite possible though that the next two episodes are the last of the series, because we
That
don't
is
know about a
possible.
season three renewal.
We don't know yet, but I'm pretty confident that we are ending this season with magic coming back.
Let's hope so.
I think they're going to fix that. Maybe even as far as changing the whole history so that this never happened in the first place. Like
Yeah,
the
maybe.
Gideon part of it. I don't know. We'll see. You know, maybe we fix it a la Honeymoon Express, where Gideon never ran that company. Like somebody who's actually friendly ran it and was actually cooperating and letting them use the chip.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see next week. We might have those videos late because we don't even know if we're getting screeners for any of them or not.
We don't know if screeners are coming out or when they're coming out. We might possibly get 211 or 212, but not 213.
Right.
So and we don't know. We don't know what we're getting. We don't know how we're going to record, when we're going to record, but we'll have the content up eventually.
Yes, eventually we will record something.
Eventually
That's
we
for
will
sure.
record something. I still think that Gideon is Jeffrey. I'm still sticking by that theory for now.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to at the current time. Nothing contradicts it.
Yeah, I think they're the right age. Yeah, I'm sticking with that.
All right. Do we have anything else to say about this episode?
Let's see. We already talked about that. That's all I have in my notes. I like the episode. It felt like a good classic Quantum Leap episode. I don't know if I'd put this like at the very top of my list, but it was definitely like top half, I'd say, of
Yeah,
episodes.
it was definitely a strong episode. One of the stronger episodes of the season, I would say.
Yeah.
Like not top tier for sure, but definitely maybe slightly below that.
Yeah.
I think the episodes I say are basically in the all grouped together. This one might be slightly ahead of most of those,
Yes, I'd agree with
probably.
that. That this is lower upper class.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. All right, so we would like to hear from you. Stacie can be reached at.
I could reach out at Twitter X, Instagram, and Threads, and the Owl's Place forums at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you liked this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on my Corn Productions pages, Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter at Corn Productions. You can buy something from the Corn Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a way to support content creators such as ourselves. And of course, you can have a Corn Productions membership for 99 cents a month to help out the channel. And one shout out that I didn't mention was the fact that Alpha ended up giving us $10 on a super like. So that's an option as well. Um,
Yay. Thank you,
yeah,
Alpha.
yes. And I'll shout him out again when we do an original series episode because that's mainly what he watches. But
Yeah. And
um,
next week is the season finale to
yes,
Harper. So make sure you tune back into NBC on February 20th to see how this season concludes. And then
yes,
either right afterwards or within the next couple days, depending on how this plays out, we'll get our take up.
yep. All right. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions signing off.